Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Tonight is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tonight I have the pleasure of being with some amazing individuals. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell the people who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Sandoval. I'm an undergrad at UNCG, University of North Carolina at Greensboro.
The whole name, okay.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know what UNCG is. And I am majoring in public health and Spanish.
Hey, my name is Elisa Benitez. I'm a second year graduate student at UNC Charlotte in Latin American Studies. And I have been a community organizer for the last 10 years with an immigrant rights organization based out of Durham, North Carolina.
So thank y'all so much for doing this tonight. I know it's the second day of the year. So happy New Year to y'all and to everyone watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if this is your first time tuning in, please feel free to ask questions, post comments. This group of young women are very knowledgeable. So please feel free just to ask whatever you would like, and then I'll make sure that they get these questions. So tonight we're talking about machismo. And like we were talking before the show, you were saying that it's just a very broad topic. And yes, it really is. So please, can y'all tell us what your experiences with machismo have been? Have you heard of the term before? And yeah, what does machismo mean to y'all? How do you kind of define it?
Yeah, I kind of define it as like an exaggerated sense of masculinity within men. I mean, it's most commonly seen in men. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, and sometimes it can, when men may feel like their masculinity is being threatened, they may use some force or violence to protect it. And I believe that it stems from patriarchy. Yeah, definitely.
I feel like machismo, when I kind of look at it, it seems a little bit more racialized. So there's misogyny, and I think there's machismo too. So I think that for Latino men, like machismo looks a little bit different than your everyday misogyny. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard of the term. Obviously, like maybe in high school is when I first heard of the term and kind of understood what it meant. But I think that, you know, growing up with it, you don't always like know that it's there. You just kind of like are always like instill these gender roles that are very, very strict. You always grow up with like this very strict upbringing as a Latina woman, especially from immigrant parents. Mm-hmm. I think it's reinforced a lot more heavily. So yeah.
So when was kind of like the first time maybe you experienced machismo in your life that you can remember?
I think it was when I was young, honestly. I said earlier how like machismo can sometimes be seen like as like being violent, and my parents, a popular form of discipline was spanking me with la chancla, or whipping me with con el cincho. Yeah, so like these were it hurt a lot, but it was a popular form of discipline in my household, and I think in many Latino households. I don't know. Have y'all experienced that before?
Yeah. I think that's like a common thing.
Yeah,
like now as adults we joke about it, but when you're younger you just kind of accept it. But now as an adult you're kind of like, that was kind of fucked up. That was kind of abusive.
Exactly. And so that's kind of like, that's the first memory of machismo I have. I was pretty rebelde. Like when I was growing up, I would not listen. I was super hyperactive, and a way like that was spanking and whipping was the only way that I could actually listen to my parents. And at the time, I wasn't focused on the pain. I mean, I wasn't focused on what it actually meant. I was more focused on the pain because it hurt a lot. But like looking back, I'm kind of like, man, that was really messed up. I wish there was they used a better way of discipline, actually talking to me and sitting me down like, hey, relax, you're too hyperactive. But instead they hit me, and that was because they wanted that kind of, power or control. They don't do that anymore. I'm grown up, but like I kind of joke or like I joke about it with my parents, and they don't. I mean, now they see that it's kind of wrong for them to do that to me. But I'm, it happens in a lot of Latino households. But yeah, that was kind of like their form of like discipline, and I think it was because they grew up in that kind of environment in their household where their parents also hit them. I know in both of my parents and their households, they grew up with domestic violence. So that was kind of like the only thing that they knew. They didn't know any better, and so that's kind of not their fault. It was just the environment that they lived in, and that was the effect of machismo. Yeah.
I think mine is a little bit different. I think I guess the clearest example I guess I would have from when I was younger is that so I have 2 younger sisters and a younger brother, me being the oldest, and like me and my sisters were always the ones who had to, like, from the age of like 5 in my case, like that's when we had to like start doing all the chores in the house, like doing the laundry, cleaning everything. But my brother was just always allowed to like chill, and to this day, like, we still get told we're the ones who get called to help with the food and help with the cleaning and everything else in the house. And my brother just gets to hang out, and my mom's excuse is like, well, he works. And to me, it's like, I work too and I go to school, so what do you mean that it's just me who has to do these things? And like, some days my mom wants me to clean my brother's room for him, and and he's a grown kid, like he's already like 20. And so, I mean,
hold on, you gotta walk me through this. So she's like, hey, I need you to go clean your brother's room.
That's
So
crazy.
so it's like, if I'm vacuuming the house, then it becomes like, don't forget to vacuum your brother's room. And it's like, and I've always been, I guess, the rude kid in the family who just like doesn't take that kind of thing, and I'm just kind of like, no, he can vacuum and clean his own room. I'm not going to do that for him. He's not a child. Tiene manos y tiene pies. Like, so, I mean, I guess that would be the clearest example. It's just like how heavily, like, we always had to do all the chores, but he never had to do anything growing up.
So real quick. So it's interesting that, so Jackie, you were saying that you kind of tied machismo in your family with kind of like actual physical violence.
Yeah.
Right? With you, it was maybe it was also that, but also it included chores and it's kind of domestic work. So, like, do you think that, so there are obviously more than one way of, there's more than one way that machismo can kind of manifest within just kind of the household, but also outside of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a question from Zapoteca in the universe. Real quick, where y'all from? Where y'all?
So I'm from Lubianos, Estado de Mexico, in Mexico. So proudly from Tierra Caliente.
Oh, if I hit me in the face just now. Okay.
My parents are from El Progreso, Jutiapa in Guatemala, but I was born in Port Chester, New York. Very small town.
Okay. Cool. I had to ask. So we have a question. Have you talked with your parents about machismo before?
Yes, all the time. And I mean, sometimes it's well received, but I've always been the loudmouth in the family. But like a little bit rebelde, I guess is what my parents would say. And other times it's like, Elisa, don't start with your stuff right now. Like, we having a family get together, or like, this is not the place and time, or we have company over. But it's like, I don't know. To me, it was just kind of one of those things where if I hear you saying something problematic, like, I'm gonna let you know, Ma, that's not cool. Like, especially because I think that in my case, right, like, my parents always tried to instill, like, very, very heavily the importance of, like, I need to be independent from a man. I need to get an education. I need to work, and so that I never have to depend on someone. But at the same time, you're giving me these mixed messages because you're telling me, like, well, you're not woman enough, or you're not a good woman if you don't know how to take care of a man. So you need to do all these other things on top of, like, being all these other things outside of the home. So it's like, I don't know. It's just one of those things where, like, it's a constant conversation. And I would say that now it's getting to a place where my parents kind of, like, understand a little bit better, like, where I'm coming from, and, like, why some of those things, like, are things that we need to outgrow. Especially, like, as you know, I have a nephew now who's 4, and so we're trying to raise him with a different mentality than, like, the ones that we were raised with.
Yeah, my parents sometimes will say remarks that are kind of like that reinforce machismo, and I have to be like, hold up, like, that's not right. And so, you know, I'm glad that they, like, take the time to listen to me, and, like, I'm not sure actually if they fully agree with me or if they actually absorb all of the things that I'm saying, but at least they're listening to me. But there are, I think, one time when I was doing the project on machismo, or in my Spanish class, I kind of wanted to get my mom's perspective on it, but she couldn't comment on it, because I think she's heard of the term before, but I don't think she's like fully understands what machismo is. Like, you know how it's so broad. I don't think she knows everything. And so it was kind of confusing for her to answer. And so I haven't had an in-depth discussion about machismo with her, but I one day would like to.
So question, do people sometimes, because right now we're kind of talking about family, so does your family sometimes think that, oh, are y'all first generation too, like in college and stuff?
Yeah.
So do your parents sometimes say, or your friends, oh, see, that's that college stuff, y'all left, you got too much of an education, that's where you're getting this from? Or is it just like, oh, they're just being them?
Yeah, it's kind of like more like, oh, like you learned that? Okay, cool. Like, I don't know, like they don't really question it. I don't know.
Not in my case, because I started participating in a lot of like social justice related things back in high school. So I started learning about a lot of different topics, and my parents have just kind of like always known that I really had an interest in the rights of people. And so I think that because they've always been known that I'm someone who really cares about other people, that this is just another one of those things that to me is like very important, right? Is like the rights of women and understanding like how that manifests for me and like other women in the family and what that looks like.
So real quick, S Black Man is saying, ooh, let's go LS hoops. Looking forward to these convos. So you've kind of talked about machismo within the family, but what about outside the family and just kind of corresponding and interacting with just Latin men? And do you also, that's part one, but then part two, do you also feel that women also perpetuate a type of machismo?
So here's a little bit of a problematic comment from me. For many years, I completely abstained or like made a commitment to myself that I would not date Latino men. Because of the strong machismo that I grew up with, and because, you know, in my mind, you know, I said Latino men are way too misogynistic. Like, I'm staying away from that, and maybe a man in another demographic will be less sexist. And in my mind, right, I was like, I'm not dating colonizers either, so I don't date white men. But
pilgrims.
But you know, when he's like, I think no matter what, right, like men are men at the end of the day, and they all have like some issue that they're working on. Just like as people, I think there's like stuff that we are all trying to outgrow and unlearn. So I think it's just one of those things where as you grow up, you're like, damn, all men are misogynistic in some ways. But yeah, I think it's like also one of those things where even outside the home, right, like even as a graduate student, the guys in my program are the most outspoken and the loudest, and sometimes like as women we can't get a word in edgewise, and they're so overpowering that often the women in my program have been the ones who are like very quiet. We have like very small voices. We'll only chime in when there's like a very long pause where we feel like maybe this is the time to say something. So we're often like really, really uncomfortable like speaking up in class. And even like in professional settings, like I don't consider myself someone who's like one to lead or put myself out there either, because I'm very, very insecure about my leadership abilities in front of other men. And like literally, I'm only thinking about these things right now as we're talking about this.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Question. Do you think so men just kind of speaking over people just loudly, just hyper masculine? Do you think that's them being machista, misogynist, or do you think that's kind of just like a byproduct of this patriarchal world?
Yeah, I think it's like a byproduct. I think it's just like that's what men are natural born leaders, right? Like that's what we've always seen.
We're conditioned to kind of
yeah,
to
and so they're the ones who are like, and do I think it's intentional necessarily? No, not all the time. Some men maybe, right? But yeah, I mean, and I do think that that's like still sexist at the end of the day, right? Because like I think that's something that if you know it, especially in academia, right? And in my program, it's like very, very left wing. That I think that some of these men should also like be kind of conscious about that and think like I'm gonna take a minute or two before I say something.
Yeah. So real quick, it's interesting that so men are like just really conditioned and socialized to be confident and and so and this is part of the patriarchy and the toxic masculinity that when dudes aren't like that, it's like, oh, he's being a little punk, he's being a little bitch, and then so that also can just kind of work in different ways. So what about you, like as far as like experiencing machismo outside of the house?
Well, I actually had a conversation about religion and with my boyfriend's family, which was like something I wanted to avoid at all costs. Like it was.
He's Latin too. Their family's
yeah,
Latin too?
he's Latino, and his family's from Honduras. And I think that afternoon, we just came back from church. I'm Catholic, and he doesn't identify with any religion, but I think his family is Pentecostal, I believe.
Oh, that's the worst too. My family, that's what they are. Yeah.
And they're really respectful though that I'm Catholic. They know some things that I believe in, and like they're really respectful. But I think that day we were having lunch together, and
oh Lord.
And then his dad brought up religion. I don't even remember how the conversation started, but I got very hot.
Lisa's ready to go right now.
And I was sweating. It was literally so scary, but I just kind of sat there, smiled, nodded with what he said, even though I didn't agree with it. He was kind of like, like in our culture, like whatever the man believes in, the woman follows him. Like, so let's say you and my boyfriend's name were to get married, you would have to follow his religion. And my boyfriend was just kind of like I don't really know what to believe in.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like why? Like in my head, I was kind of like, why? And I didn't have the balls or courage to like
disagree.
Yeah, I don't know, or like say anything to like change his point of view, just because I wanted to be really respectful, and I didn't I don't know. We're still in that like honeymoon phase, like we're trying to get to know each other, so I don't want to ruin anything. But like, I don't know. I wish I would have said something. Maybe eventually we'll have the conversation again, and like if we were having any plans of getting married, then that's where I would like kind of put my foot down and be like, hey, this is actually what I believe in. Yeah.
So I have a question. Do you have a question? I feel like you had something. No? Okay. So I'm not trying to get all personal, but like when you said like ruin things, like with his family or with him. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like ruin things. Cause,
Because
like right now, like we're all really good. They like me, and like I don't want them to be like, oh, who's this girl? Like, I don't know. I'm unapologetic sometimes, but I'm also really apologetic. So I don't want their parents to be like, oh, who's this outspoken girl? Like, but also I think that's really damaging to like. Or it's not damaging, but it doesn't help anything. It just kind of reinforces like those gender roles and like those kinds of like dangerous points of views. I don't know. So
do y'all sometimes feel that you can't, because like we're talking about like the rights of human beings, right? It's not like in that to some people is extremist. So do y'all feel like you oftentimes have to kind of like police yourselves, or kind of you can't say too much about the rights of women because then you're looked at as just this woman's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All the time.
And is like, I guess, with everybody or just within Latin circles?
I think it varies.
Yeah. Because sometimes, like, if I feel like I'm in a safe environment, like, that's when I'll be, like, really outspoken. But, like, if I ever feel threatened, especially in, like, that situation with my boyfriend's family, like, I was kind of just backed away. Didn't really say much because I didn't want to offend anyone. I didn't want to disrespect anyone in any kind of way. But, like, also, I knew if I said something, it wouldn't have been disrespectful, I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where I have to gauge the audience or who I'm talking to get a sense of, like, how safe am I here?
Yeah.
Kind of picking your battles, too, sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, real quick, let me read some of these comments. Wendy's saying yes. Like, they say you have to cook because your husband don't want a woman that can't cook. Can y'all relate to that?
Yeah.
Y'all heard that before? Let's see. Aurelia's saying I'm here. Pablino's saying, are machistas the reverse of like the Instagram booty models? One too much macho, one too sexual. I think I see where they're trying to go with this, but I don't know.
I guess I feel like I'd need a little bit like of a
Yeah,
clarification to
please
really like understand
give
the
us
question.
something. Agam is saying such a good topic. Good LL, go LS. And K-Pex is saying at least, oh, you got all the fans, you got all of Mexico tuning in tonight. So I have obviously do you believe that women sometimes perpetuate machista mentalities or just ideologies?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like,
I think anybody can be kind of sexist in a lot of ways. I mean, I know that I perpetuate like those views sometimes too on myself and on other women. So like I make that common joke that we say like, "Ooh, look how my tortillas came out." I'm like, "Ya me puedo casar, I can get married now."
Yeah. Or when I mop and the floors are spotless, I'm like, "Wow, okay, somebody
I'm
wipe me up." Because yeah.
But so now these things could also be like fun and like humorous, and it's kind of a way of taking back things that have been used to like kind of oppress people, right? So in a way, it's not like a bad thing, right?
I mean, I guess like we could say those jokes, but if a man said that to me, I would feel some type of way because my dad says those things to me too.
But like in a serious way.
Yeah, or he tries to joke with me, and I'm like, "Dad, you can't joke with me like that."
So it's funny because like my mom, like today, like she made some amazing coffee. Like that's a kind of our thing. Like we kind of make coffee together, but she's kind of taking the lead role in that. And I'm like, "Mami, ya te puedes casar." And I said that today, and it was a joke and we just kind of laughed about it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think twice about it. I thought that was funny. But now I'm like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "Oh." What? So one of my questions is, so like the way I've tried, and I think other dudes like have tried to make sense of like sexism and patriarchy is kind of like drawing parallels with racism and systemic racism, because like that's how we're trying to. Oh, okay, I could see this, how this kind of works. So do you sometimes think that not everything has to be sexist? Like it could be something, and it doesn't have to be sexist, but it just could be that. Like so, like if someone says a joke, is that necessarily a sexist joke, or is it just like a joke sometimes, or it's like, nah, bro, like it's always sexist? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me, but I think it varies. Because, like, if I'm with my friends, and, like, my friends are really sarcastic, so I'm just kind of, like, we all take things, like, really lighthearted, but if someone I didn't know, or, like, it also just depends on, like, environments, new people. If someone I didn't know said something, like, that I thought was sexist, I'd be like, I'd have to point it out to them and be like, hey, that wasn't funny.
I also feel like if it's, like with my dad, I don't allow him to joke with me like that because he's my dad and like we just had a very troubled history. But also like if it was some random guy trying to make a joke with me like that, then I'll be like, we not there yet. You can't joke with me like that. So I feel like again, right? It's one of those things where like it kind of varies on like who I'm talking to, and the context of the joke.
So it's interesting because like I posted a meme like a couple of days ago, like on my Instagram story, and it was about Latina women, right? It's like when you try to explain something to a Latina woman, but it was like something like
that's what it was,
but I forgot like the rest of it, and then it was like the meme had like the face that a Latina woman would make or something like
it was Bird Box and it was like Sandra
Bullock.
And it said when you try and get a woman to see where she was wrong.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
And she's just like.
That.
So, like, I didn't think of it, like, in the sexist way, right? And I was like, okay, like, I grew up around Latina women, like, I'm Latin, so, like, whatever. Like, I didn't think of... So, I wonder, like, if y'all saw it, like, did you think of it as sexist? Or was it just kind of like, oh, okay, that was funny.
I mean, I saw it, and I laughed at it, too. But I think I would see it as, like, a very... I think in some ways it's like racialized and sexist and not necessarily like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of know you, Herson, so I didn't think anything of it, but if it was like some random dude, like if it was a white guy, for example, then I'd be like, first off, like you're trying to racialize me as like a feisty Latina and I don't appreciate like the stereotype that you're putting on us. Because I think that's really damaging to us, right? That like, I think as Latina women too, in a situation like that, right? No matter what we try and do, like, sometimes like we can admit like I kind of see like where this comes from, right? I'm kind of like that too. I'm kind of stubborn, but it's one of those things too where I feel like we don't get taken seriously too, and people guys don't want to hear sometimes like why I'm so serious and upset about this topic, and you just trying to shut me up, and you're just trying to get me to see your point of view, but you don't want to hear where I'm coming from.
That's so true.
That was some real shit. Yeah. So now I'm thinking about it, and I think this is important, and I think this leads me to another part that we were kind of talking about before the show. So you meet these Latin dudes who might be like very like just anti-racism, right? They're all for like they get the race stuff, they get the immigration stuff, but like the gendered stuff, like the machista stuff, they might not really get. Like, so have you met dudes like that? Have y'all met dudes like that who might be very conscious of race stuff or you know, social class or whatever, but when it comes to this, it's like, nah, chill.
There's only one boy that I can think of, and this was way back in high school. He was always like very like, he thought he was like a smartass. I mean, I don't know, but like, you know, I founded my school's gender equality club, and so he always would make these remarks about how, saying how like my club is like black, like we don't really talk about anything, and like, you know, one time I just had to, one day I had to address it to him like, hey, you know, like we're actually like talking about some real issues here, so if you want to, you know, be more informed, come to our clubs or club meetings or whatever. And so I remember him saying, I don't know, actually I don't remember, but he said something along the lines that I thought was very sexist and very offensive. And so he was like, whoa, like, sorry, I didn't mean to trigger anything. Like, I know how you get very, like, mad and bitchy. And so I was just like, I was really confused. I was like, what? So, you know, I had to, like, de-escalate that situation real quick because I'm not the type of person that, like, starts any trouble. But, like, also I kind of see where, like, he's coming from.
Yeah.
He was raised in a household where his dad was very like he was a real machismo. And so yeah.
So I have a question. Hey, we got guests at the house. We're hanging out. So it's interesting like what you said about how you had to kind of de-escalate the situation, right? And we see this kind of a lot with like when someone tries to like come for you or like on some type of like sexist, racist, classist, whatever, it takes the person who's already being othered to kind of then more baggage, more kind of onus on you, because to kind of de-escalate or to kind of calm things down.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be looked at as trouble. So it's like, it's kind of this like constant, it's like with white guilt. Like when like white people start feeling all guilty and shit, now I have to like deal with your guilt and like make you feel less guilty.
Yeah.
Or like feel less like, so do you feel like this is just kind of like a constant battle? Like,
yeah, that's definitely something that I'm currently like working on, but like I am becoming more unapologetic, which I really like. That's kind of like one of my goals for this year. I mean, obviously, like I'm not gonna be rude to everyone for no reason, but like when I'm talking about something I'm really passionate about, like please, like all I ask is for you to listen. Don't comment on anything, but if I offend you, please let me know. And that's just, I'm never gonna be sorry for what I believe in. Yeah.
What do you think?
Restate it to me again.
Yeah, about being unapologetic and how that can be seen as rude. Cause I'll be honest, like I guess I'm at a point now too where I'm just like I don't give a fuck. Like if it comes out like that and you were offended, hey bro, like, we can talk about this.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think for a long time I was like that. I think some recent things in my life have like made me question myself a little bit in that sense. So in my case, I think I'm like backtracking on it, and just trying to like be less pronounced and like quieter on like a lot of these subjects, and just kind of like mind my own business.
And when you say quiet, you mean like out, like and about. But like, cause on social media sometimes it's different, right? Cause like people might be, and you see this a lot with like trolls, where they're just like they'll talk shit on social media. If you like catch them outside, like
They're quiet.
they might be quiet and you know not as kind of just vocal about it. Real quick, I want to read some comments. Karen is saying, I think it's important how these jokes are being used. That meme was a joke. Talking about the meme I posted. But sometimes Latinas do get boxed into the category of we don't listen or we have an attitude. So, oh shit, I closed out and I closed out of the other question. Sorry. That sucks. Yeah, so talking about just kind of to your point, right? How just you kind of get boxed in. So like, have you seen kind of toxic masculinity kind of play out with Latino men as well? And does everyone know what I mean by toxic masculinity? Just want to make sure the verbiage. So, you want to define toxic masculinity real quick?
I mean, I feel like it's so hard to describe, right? But like, I guess a toxic masculinity guy is like, he's like super hetero, super serious about like being read and being viewed as like this very hyper masculine, aggressive, like guy who's very macho. He really likes really attractive women, and I feel like
them.
Yeah, objectifies us. Like, I think it's often, you know, oh, he's like very, very, very serious about like the size of his dick all the time too, and his prowess, and just like drinks a lot.
Yeah,
it's like all these things that you would envision, like, just I don't know. He annoying.
And his masculinity also kind of, it's used as a way to kind of not show emotions. Right, because if he does show that he's caring or that he's sensitive at times, then he's being a little bitch. So it's a constant proving of his masculinity as well. So do you see this with not just Latino men, but also like other men as well, and how that not only affects them but could also affect y'all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, can you talk about it a little bit?
I mean, I think in my case, right, like, you know, even in relationships, like, those things play out in our families, in any type of way. I mean, like, we all have, like, guy friends who are like that, who are very concerned about how many women they can sleep with, and, like, having numbers and body counts. And, like, I think you hear it played out more so in the sense that, oh, I'm allowed to sleep with however many I want, but you're a girl. It's different for you.
Yeah.
You can't have a body count.
Well, you have to be a virgin. Like,
right. Yeah. Like, I can't be with no hoes. Yeah. And it's like one of those things where the second you even have one partner, she a hoe, no matter what. And I think the standards are so much higher for us in terms of like how we're allowed to behave and present ourselves. And guys are just allowed to act reckless all the time, and do whatever they want in a lot of ways. And I mean, I've had guy friends who don't know how to act with me, in ways that made me really, really uncomfortable. And a lot of guys who, you know, I've been involved with who also just like were really, really violent towards me, who considered themselves woke too, but in some ways, right, like at the end of the day, they didn't check themselves in certain behaviors that like really, really impacted me in negative ways.
I'm just kind of listening. Trying to figure out a good follow-up question, because I'm thinking about a lot that you're saying, because like we're all kind of exposed to these kind of people, right? And part of this, in like kind of honing in the Latin community or Latin communities, we were talking before the show about how we see pedophilia among Latin men. And so can you talk a little bit about that, please?
You had some great stuff earlier.
I think it's just, I'm sure most of us are familiar, right, with like the fact that even growing up, like we're used to like men, much older men staring us down, and some of us can recall it being to like when we were preteens to when we were kids maybe. I distinctly will never ever forget like the eyes of like this one guy who stared me down so intensely, and I was only 11. And we were at a store, and like to this day, like whenever I go back to Durham, I've seen him like once or twice after that encounter when I was 11, and I have never forgotten his face. And it always freaks me out when I see him. And even like being 15 years old and getting marriage proposals, and you know, I have
from like old ass dudes.
Yeah, like I was 15 and I got a marriage proposal from a guy who was 30 years old. And even like, I don't know, it's just like, even I have like guy cousins who have immigrated from Mexico, and they openly say, right, like that they're all older, they're all like in their late 20s, early 30s, and openly say, right, that they're like actively pursuing or want to marry like girls who are 13, 14, 15 years old, because they're easy to control and they're easier to dominate, and like they're very obedient and will do whatever they want them to do. And like, I will call them out on it, and I openly say, I'm like, you're a pedophile. There's a word for that. But I always get shushed, right, by like the women in my family, by like aunts and like cousins who are like, don't be starting with your stuff in here, like it's not that serious, blah blah. And it's like, what? Like, what do you mean it's not that serious? Like a grown man saying he's pursuing a girl, like if you wouldn't allow that to your own daughters, why are you allowing him to say these things about these other girls?
Yeah. I also had like a similar like encounter with a family relative. I feel comfortable sharing this situation, but like it was one night where I went to my cousin's house and this uncle was there, and you know I always greet all my family relatives or else it's considered rude, and so finally I go to this one uncle and he hugs me and kind of gropes my butt, and so I kind of thought like, oh, maybe he brushed his hand by accident, but like it was a firm grope. So I was really confused, really uncomfortable, but didn't talk about it until a couple of family members and cousins also shared their a similar encounter with the same uncle, and so it like kind of made sense. Like, okay, well this uncle is definitely a pedophile, and he wasn't just doing this by accident. And so many of my cousins have brought it up. One cousin is actually shunned by the family because it became such like a dramatic thing in my family, and like I don't know, it's really sad. I still talk to that cousin, and you know, like everything that they have said, I definitely believe in because that man is capable of doing so many other things. And so even when I try to bring it up to my mom, you know, she actually said that she had a kind of a similar encounter with that uncle, but never said anything because she wanted to avoid drama, and that she believed me, but like, and she felt at times like telling my dad this, but she knew that if she told my dad, it would escalate to something bigger. So yeah, a lot of family members were quiet and silenced, and then finally when my cousin had the courage to speak up, he was shunned, and it's really sad actually.
Thank you so much, first of all, for just sharing that story.
Yeah.
Because even like your cousin opening up and sharing that allowed everyone else to also share that story. So you sharing that maybe also could be helping folks, right? But we see this so much I didn't grow up in any other type of, I grew up in Latin communities, so we see this a lot with like family members who sexually assault like their nephews, their nieces, sometimes daughters, sons. And I mean, in the fact that, and I've also heard from a lot of aunts and uncles, like especially if it happened to a girl, or boys too, little boys when it happens to them, oh, like you can't open up about this. Don't be starting shit. And it's like, it's victim blaming, right? And we do this to kind of absolve the perpetrators of this. And when we talk about our communities, especially, a lot of us come from very poor immigrant communities. We don't have the resources. You said something beautiful earlier about how sometimes even if you want to talk about it, like you feel like you might not have the words to really. And again, you see with our communities, just lack of education. People are scared. Patriarchy and misogyny, like violence is a real thing, right? So like it's tough to even navigate, and people being shunned, like that happens in my family, like a lot more. But I'm seeing too that with more education, like not that education solves everything, but I'm seeing how that's kind of changed like family dynamics, and it's for the better. It has helped. Real quick, let me read some of this. Wendy is saying yes, girls 14 and over are getting marriage proposals or even have kids by that age. All State of Mind is saying both women bring up good examples of family. Both of you family members needing help, hold other problematic family members accountable. We must break these cycles and hold these people accountable. Absolutely. K Jet is saying these things never get reported, which is another good point, that police wise we don't really like report this to anybody, right? Like, you know.
I mean, I feel like there's a number of factors, right? Like for some
please.
families it's like immigration.
Oh yeah,
there's like a huge fear, and I think in some cases, right, like I don't think that we're always taught this sense that we have a right over our bodies. And so I think that sometimes it's like you just grow up with this sense that maybe this is normal or this is okay. So and that's not to excuse it. I just think that, I guess as I'm trying to be more understanding of like some of the older generation women in our families who sometimes, like I said, right, don't have the words. They don't understand these things and don't always understand that like this isn't normal, and what they experience themselves oftentimes, because I think if we talk to the women in our families, they've gone through similar experiences, sometimes went through very traumatic events, and they just have quieted them their entire lives because they thought it was normal and they thought it was okay to happen to them too.
Yeah.
And not just that, but sometimes being quiet is a survival technique.
Also true.
Right? It's a way of just staying alive.
I mean, if getting shunned, like, I'm sure many of us like can resonate with someone in the family who's been shunned, and you don't want that kind of like losing all your resources.
I was talking to a young man this summer. He must be 17, Hispanic boy, and he was sexually assaulted by his uncle. And when he finally told his parents, they were calling him all type of just pejoratives, just homophobic pejoratives, not believing him, telling him to man up. I mean, completely ostracized from the family. And this boy is 17. 17-year-old little boy. So like the patriarchy and like the way that works and it manifests and the way it absolves like adults of their responsibilities just is so disgusting, and it happens in so many ways. Real quick, Karen is saying our communities don't want to be outed about things like that because we're so private. They always say, lo que pasa en la casa se queda en la casa. So what happens in the house stays in the home. And diverse solidarity is saying even when reported, it's usually treated like it's not a big deal. I mean, President of the United States, right? We don't have to go that far. Like, this isn't just like a Latin thing. KJ is saying victims always get blamed. All state of mind saying, are there any suggestions on a healthy balance between machismo and respectful men? Is it possible to be considered both?
I don't think that you can be a machista and a respectful dude at the same time. I think that there's like a term that I'm seeing come up a lot more is just like healthy masculinity. Is what I'm seeing the term for it. There's like toxic masculinity, and then I'm seeing a lot of conversations around healthy masculinity. And it's like simply a guy who's in touch with his feelings and is able to like, you know, talk to his bros about like, hey bro, like I'm really sad right now. Like my girlfriend just broke up with me. About like normal everyday things, and like recognizing that it's okay for you to be sad. It's okay for you to be upset about things. It's okay, you know, to open up about experiences that we've all been through. And that way, right, like it opens the door to ending things like, to men silencing domestic violence that they experience. It opens the door so that men can talk about like sexual violence that they experience, right? Because those are like two of the biggest like stigmas that men face. And I think as like, if we can teach men to be more in touch with their feelings and like literally communicate better with women too, like I think communication is one of those really, really big things. Like emotions and talking will like opens the gateway to so many other things.
It's so Insecure is like one of my favorite shows. I don't know if y'all watch it.
Oh, on HBO?
Yeah.
I was hearing about it.
It's
so good.
Need to get on it.
Like one of the dope things about the show is that it addresses kind of like friendships between men, right? And one of the main characters tries to open up to his boys about him going through it with his girl, and his boys just aren't hearing him. Like, and so recently, a lot of my boys and I started talking more about stuff. So one thing that's been big, we've been talking about how the things that we do to dodge women when we don't want to have sex. It's like a very real thing, but you never really think about this with dudes. So he's like, yo, like sometimes I just don't want to do it. And then we're kind of talking about the excuses that we make up or we've made up before. And I'm like, yo, like we've never talked about this before. This is like good that we're talking about this. He's like, yo, I never really thought about it. He'd never really talked about this with other dudes. And I've had just more and more and more conversations with other dudes. There's like really dope, like kind of like male support groups in Miami where I live. And we talk about these things. They're hard, just how I would imagine any kind of private thing is hard to talk about. But I think that's a beautiful point about this dude's needing to. I used to call women bitches all the time. Like that's how I grew up. Like music, my boys, that was it. But then, it took my homeboys calling me out and like, yo, like why y'all call women bitches? I'm like, I don't know, like bitches knows. Like that was just the thing. I think I told you about this, right? And it took like my boys holding me accountable, like. So like, I'm not saying it should take that, but that is incredibly important. So I love that you said that. Real quick, let me read some of these comments. We got a bunch. Dodgerette saying, like women, there is a place, usually workplace, where masculinity is necessary or helpful. The issue is when we bring those back to the home and let it affect our relationships and our personal lives. I'll say to mine is I agree. You can be masculine without being a jerk. I'm kind of curious about the workplace thing.
Yeah, I'd want to hear more. Like, can he comment on that?
It's a woman. Yeah. Dodgerette, please kind of give us some more on that, please.
Yeah, for sure.
So I had never heard this healthy masculinity. So the other thing, it's like I don't think things are black and white. Like we talked about how we're all trying to work through things. I think you can have another Insecure reference. So they said one of the dudes ended up saying about Lawrence is one of the main characters by his ex-girlfriend. He's like, "Yo, Issa's a hoe," and then Lawrence says she's not a hoe, but she did some hoe shit. We can get into hoes, but the I think the point is that sometimes you can have, I think as a dude, and y'all let me know what y'all think, machista moments, right? And you need to be held accountable for those, right? And you need to work through that and do better. But that does not necessarily make you a full-on like machista. What do y'all think?
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, because it's.
Because like you said, like there's sometimes moments where we like may perpetuate machismo in a way, but like we're not actually machistas. Like I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, right? I think that we all have those moments. And I think that as long as you're open to hearing it and listening, right? And even like, she not a hoe, she just doing a hoe shit. I mean, I would probably say something like that too, right? Like, she's not a hoe, she just likes doing hoe shit. It's a lot of women who could resonate with that.
Yeah.
For sure. So what happened in Insecure was they were in a relationship and she cheated on her boyfriend. So that's what they were talking about. So which brings me to a question. Lately, I've seen a lot on social media, women really taking back like this pejorative of hoe. Like there was this really dope video. This girl, black girl in a pink dress. I don't know if y'all saw it. She was being interviewed by this white dude. And she's like, yeah, I'm a hoe, I'm a hoe, I'm a hoe, I'm a hoe. And the dude was like, oh, so you sleep around? She's like, nah, I'm actually a virgin. But your mom's a hoe.
Oh,
did y'all see that?
I saw that. I had
I've
so
never
many
heard of
questions.
this.
I don't know. It looked like they were at a parade or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I've seen it just like people taking back like what it means to be a hoe. I have a homegirl, PhD student, and she's always talking about, yo, I'm a hoe, I'm a hoe, I'm a hoe. And like, whatever she's doing, like that's like it's just kind of like irrelevant. It's just like her way of kind of empowering herself by calling herself this. Have y'all kind of heard this or like?
Yeah, and I think it's partially because these words have been used to like demean us or insult us. In my case, right, like, I'm very much the type who like only has like sexual encounters with like very serious partners. And that has meant that I've only been sexually active with 2 people in my life. But the reason why I use that kind of terminology for myself is because like hoe and slut and like bitch and like every other word you can think of in the book was used against me from like the time I was 13 years old because I always wore like really revealing clothing and I never felt like weird or ashamed about my body in that sense. And so to me, it was just a sense of like, I'm going to take back those words. And especially like, because I am a survivor of like a rape and another like sexually violent experience. Like I try to use those words so that no other person can like shame me for like the violence that I've experienced on my body, as well as like who I am as a woman and like making choices over who I sleep with.
Wow, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Real quick, I want to read these comments. We're running out of time. We have like 10 minutes left. God, so many questions. All right. Delicious Paula saying, do you think that the fact that our Latin community is still profoundly religious reinforces machismo and patriarchy and the inability of women having the right to our bodies? What's a way to balance? I'm going to read everything and then we can come back to it. As a black man saying, Hoops mentioned this a little. Did they call you Hoops?
Yeah, they call me Hoops because I always wear big hoops.
Hoops mentioned this a little at the beginning, but not being as confident in leadership skills when you're around a group of men. What are some of the ways you all help yourselves to get through those spaces? Dodgerette is saying there's a common theme among men and women in most workplaces where we are expected to be masculine in order to hold down our positions. Being submissive won't allow you to be taken seriously. And diverse solidarity is saying hoes life. So let's go back to the first one. Do you think that religion and machismo?
I mean, there's a lot of references in the Bible where machismo and like patriarchy is like carried out. I can't name like any specific ones because there's just so many. But yeah, definitely, I agree.
It's written by men. I mean.
Yeah.
One of my homegirls back home says, "I don't trust anything that's been touched by a man." That includes the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like, I think we've all been controlled in some way by religion.
And we're trying to get these through really quick. Okay, I like this question. Hoops mentioned about the leadership skills when being around a group of men. What are some ways that you all help yourselves to get through these spaces?
I'm gonna let you know when I figure that out, actually. Haven't gotten there.
So, like, I'm a very aggressive arguer, especially in the classroom when it comes to like political stuff. I'm very just like I know myself. I had a homegirl come up to me and be like, "Yo, like you take up so much space." She's like, "For a little dude, you take up a lot of space, especially in the classroom." And then she was like citing off examples. One time you said this. She's Mexican. One time you said this. One time you said, and I was just like, "Oh shit." And I was like, "But they were all good points." And that was my comeback. She's like, "I'm not saying they weren't. I'm just saying let other people talk." And I was like, "Oh." I'm like, "That's fair. That's a good point. That's fair." So, like, I think one of the things is if you have people that you're, like, dudes that you're close with, like, literally just talking to them and telling them, if you feel comfortable, like, tell them that experience you've had with them. Or if you know that they're cool with somebody else who takes up a lot of space, like, tell them, and then maybe this person can talk to him.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that, but that's a way. And I think that's been very helpful for me and a lot of my homeboys and just friends that I just know. So maybe that's some inside information. I don't know.
Okay. I'll take that back.
Yeah, you know, I got a little knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so, bless you. So, all right, so we have like 5 minutes left. Yeah, running out of time. And then Karen said they can talk if they want to talk. I'm not sure who she's talking about. So 5 minutes left. If there's something that you kind of, we talked about a lot tonight, like a lot. I didn't think we were gonna touch this much. If there's something, I think keeps on freaking me out. If there's like one thing that you can kind of tell everybody, it's like, what do you want to tell them as far as like machismo, Latin communities, empowering, whatever you want to share?
I definitely think that this conversation shouldn't just end here. Like, with your friends, classmates, colleagues, like this conversation should be like an ongoing thing because it just wakes people up. It kind of like helps people unlearn, because honestly, having like just our conversation earlier before this, I learned so many things and I'm still unlearning so many other things as well. So yeah, definitely keep having this conversation as uncomfortable as it may get. Like, definitely keep it going, because that's the only way that things can change.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like discomfort is okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think we shy away from like, oh, this conversation makes me uncomfortable because like I don't want to offend my mom or my dad or so and so, but like sometimes, or your partner, but sometimes you kind of gotta be a little uncomfortable, especially in a relationship. Because if this
we didn't even get to that.
If this is someone you're trying to be with and you can't tell your own partner like, hey, like you're actually like being this or that, and you're like mistreating me or etc., like I think you've got to rethink those things a little bit. But yeah, I think it's definitely just like you're saying, like, don't be afraid to like have these conversations. Don't let it end here. And I think, have this conversation with your homegirls, have this conversation like with your friends, with your guy friends, and ask them like, especially your guy friends too. Like if I think guys are always taught like to not show emotion, but sometimes you kind of got to ask them like, hey bro, we haven't talked in a while. Are you good? Like, how have you been? Like, you could talk to me anytime. Like, I think we really got to try a little bit harder sometimes to like really reach out to our guy friends and really have genuine conversations and demonstrate, not just checking in like, hey, how you doing? But like genuinely trying to know like how they're doing.
You know, it's funny. I have homegirls that'll hit me up like, hey, like how's your day going? And I'm like, why do you care? Like, why are you asking? Like, I always get like super suspicious of it. I think that would happen if anyone asked me that though. I'm just like, why? Like, cause I feel like nowadays, like no one really just does that in general. And it's interesting when we talk about emotions. Like, guys are extremely emotional, but it depends. Like, we gender emotions too, right? If a dude is like super excited, that's an emotion, but we don't think about it. Emotions, we tend to think of you crying, you know, you being sad. But being happy is also an emotion. Being too happy is an emotion. So it's like, I think talking to your guy friends and kind of letting them know about these things is helpful. Definitely. At least I know my guy friends and I know how we are. And like these conversations, you know, they suck. I'll be honest with you, they suck. Like, these aren't fun conversations.
I mean, it don't always gotta be rude too. It really could just be as simple as like, bro, that's not cool.
Absolutely. And you see how they take it. If they don't take it, then they're an asshole. We got to work on some things. So, real quick, I want to read these last things. Let me see. Oh shit, Mariama, what'd you say? Oh, I missed it. Oh man, I missed the comment. All right, I'll say to mine saying, be confident, and if you're not, fake it till you make it. Regarding spaces. Oh man, I really want to ask this. What is your opinion on slut shaming?
Hate it.
It's wrong. Don't do it.
Hate it so
We're
much.
leaving that in 2018.
Right.
Hey, okay. All right, that was a good question. And then Dodger is saying emotions are weaknesses is what I've been told by men. Ask them which emotions, and because they show a lot of emotions.
Everybody gotta have emotions.
Everybody.
Also leaving that in 2018. Everybody gotta have emotions, and not just anger.
Yeah.
Please allow yourself to be sad and happy and insecure and like whatever other feelings you have.
And validate your own emotions as well. That's so important.
I love it. That's a great way to end. Thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. Thank y'all to these beautiful, brilliant, inspiring young group of women for being on the show and being vulnerable and just talking about your experiences. Next week, we have a 2-part series coming up on Native Americans leading up to the Native American March in DC. I'm going to that too. We're trying to do episodes leading up to that. So feel free to tune in next week, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again to these amazing women. Y'all take care. Peace and blessings, and we'll see y'all next time.